everybody, and welcome to the Draft Preview Special. He's James the Thrusting Moynihan. I'm Ross Berge. I wanted to quickly note that the draft has been moved. It's been moved to 7:30 p.m. Sunday night so that Andy can finish his coaching of the U13 soccer game.
Yes, and that's Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern, yep, good point. Also, we wanted to note the rule changes for this year. There's been 4. We have a half point per reception. The flex position now includes the tight end. The trade deadline has been moved back, and that's been moved back to week 14. And then the 4th one is that we're now doing fractional points that won't impact anybody except for Al and Andy.
Very interesting year this year, implementing the fractional points, as you mentioned, and of course that half-point PPR. How does that affect the draft? A lot of question marks up in the air.
Yeah, a lot of injuries going into the season. We have Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, Michael Vick, Peyton Manning. Who knows where they'll go?
Only God.
Only God knows. All right, and real quickly, we're going to go through each draft position and the owners and their careers as well.
Yeah, some career highlights. Started off with John Hart, number 1.
All right, the first pick goes to John Hart. He actually was last place in Happy Innings last year and had a pretty bad year the previous year as well. But you know what? He has the number 1 pick, so he's got to pick someone solid, someone dependable. So we'll see where it goes from there.
He'll probably get injured. With the second pick, we have the commish, who's always in the hunt for the money. The real question, I think, this year is when will Ross take Peyton Manning? That is the big question.
That's a good question. I will take it. All right, and the third pick goes to Snoots. He was last in 2010. Also finished below 500 last year. Doesn't make a whole lot of moves, so we'll see if he trusts his team yet again this year.
At number 4, we have Rag, who has actually been held winless, as we've mentioned, since the premiere episode of Rag's Rant. Rag's a 3-time moneymaker, so you know he's going to be in the mix. But how will that Rag's Rant affect him going forward?
Good point. Next up in the 5th selection, we have Albert, last year's champ, of course. He had a solid draft last year, obviously. I was right behind him. I remember, wishing I was in front of him every time because he had some good selections. So I look for that to continue this year.
A lot of women wish that they were in front of him.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that 6th pick, we have Andy Lynch. Andy's highlights throughout his career have really been based around his contests with Big Al. The constant ties, we'll see how that plays out. A very interesting spot for Andy in the 6th hole. He could really shape the way that the first round and the rest of the draft goes, depending on who he picks.
Next up, we have Grim in the 7th position. He's had 7 wins in each of the last 2 years. I'm always curious if he'll take an eagle, whether it's LaShawn McCoy slipping, or maybe he'll reach for Michael Vick. We'll see.
We'll see. Next up, we have Chuck. He's still in the league? I guess the only question we really have is if he's going to take Mike Thomas again.
He might. All right, and then we have 9th, B-Mac. He was 8 and 9 last year. Really, who the hell knows who B-Mac's going to take?
Yeah, depending on his ADD medicine, you really never know what kind of draft you're going to get.
You never know.
Next up, we have Jake the Snake. Jake has actually taken on a new name, the Masturbations.
That's right.
Very exciting to implement that new team name. He never really goes for the big splash and making pickups. Always tries to remain consistent, and that's gotten him pretty much nowhere throughout his fantasy career.
Yep. Next up, Brendan in the 11th spot. He was in the money last year. You know what, this is only his 2nd year, but I already see him as a formidable opponent. I look to him to have another solid draft this year.
Absolutely. Myself, as you know, a multi-time champion. The Rat Tails just look to make their mark in a big way throughout the draft.
And then we have 13th, Jedediah Aldhouse. He was not in the top as one of the top finishers last year. I actually think he will return to the top this year, so I think he'll have a good draft.
Yeah, he's been a formidable opponent over the years. And last up, we have J.K. Thompson, the Thompson Takeover. Another former champ you have here. He has picks both 14 and 15. Really a perennial favorite within the fantasy football landscape. So very excited to see how that 14 and 15 shape out.
That's right. So there you have it, folks. I talked to J.K. last night. He ordered the 40-pound pig. So we're getting ready for that. Big weekend ahead of us.
Very exciting. Can't wait for it. Looking forward to a good time. God bless all of you, including Jesus Christ.
Later.